the late decades of the 23rd century, humanity no longer dreamed small. Cities reached the clouds, oceans gleamed with solar fields, deserts bloomed with glass and light. But even amid that triumph, humankind remained restless. The stars still whispered, and humanity, stubborn, curious, unyielding, answered back. At the heart of the world's greatest scientific coalition stood a single structure, a colossus of alloy and energy named the Helios Ark. It was not merely a ship. It was the sum of everything human civilization had learned, feared, and hoped for since the first spark was struck in a cave of stone. The Ark was born in orbit piece by piece, assembled by nations that once competed but now cooperated under a single flag, not of color or creed but of purpose. Its hull shimmered silver against the Earth's blue curve, a mirror reflecting the species that had built it. Inside its engines, the Singularity Core hummed, producing energy cleaner than any sun. It could sail through galaxies, survive centuries, and carry the flame of humankind farther than any dream before it. When the day of launch arrived, the entire planet watched. Old men who had seen war, children who had only known peace, all stared at the screens as the countdown began. 5, 4, 3. The ignition thundered across the heavens, a roar so loud it shook continents. And when the Helios Ark rose, a white pillar slicing the sky, humanity felt united for the first time in history. Generations later, people would still remember where they were when the Ark departed. Some whispered prayers, some simply cried, and somewhere deep inside, every person on Earth felt something rare: pride without division. The mission was simple to describe but impossible to measure. Travel beyond the Milky Way, chart the void, find what lay beyond the edge of known space. For 12 long years, transmissions came home. Calm voices reporting distances, nebula readings, and the quiet wonder of drifting between stars. The Ark's crew became symbols of endurance, explorers, scientists, poets of the infinite. But on the 13th year, the messages changed. The logs spoke of anomalies, pulsing signals unlike any human frequency, light that bent the wrong way, echoes that answered without being called. Then came the name, a word repeated in half a dozen data streams, captured by every sensor, translated by AI linguistics into 3 syllables: Vyrexa Dominion. At first, no one knew what it meant. Perhaps a celestial event, perhaps an ancient star system. But deep in the decoded fragments were patterns, structured, intelligent, deliberate. Somewhere out there, something had heard the Ark. Then the transmission stopped. Not distortion, not damage, just silence. Weeks passed. Nations panicked quietly, pretending calm on the news networks while secret meetings filled with fear. Families of the crew held vigils, waiting for voices that would never return. 3 months later, the stars themselves changed. Astronomers at the lunar array detected fractures of light at the edge of the solar system, dimensional distortions, like tears in the fabric of reality. Objects emerged from them, sharp-edged and dark. Their speed defied human comprehension. They were moving toward Earth. At first, denial, then confusion, then terror. Within days, the fleet entered orbit. Black silhouettes, silent and immense, eclipsing the sun. When their shadows fell, day turned to dusk. And in that eternal moment, every human being knew the universe had answered back. The first contact came not as greeting but command. A voice, mechanical yet resonant, broadcast across every frequency. "We are the Vyrexa Dominion. You are catalogued. Your world contains resources necessary for preservation of order. Submit, do not resist." The world froze. Then it fought. Defense systems from every continent activated. Satellites reprogrammed into weapons. The skies became fire. For the first time, humanity was one army, united not by politics but by survival. Jets screamed through clouds. Missiles blazed upward. Every defense humanity had built over centuries of mistrust was unleashed together, aimed at a single threat. For a moment, the Earth burned brighter than the sun. And then, as quickly as it began, it ended. The alien counterstrike was silent, beams of pure light cutting through the atmosphere, dissolving steel like paper. Entire cities blinked out. No noise, no explosion, only absence. Human weapons could not touch them. Human speed could not match them. Human courage, however, refused to die. From the ashes of the first onslaught, battered fleets regrouped. Commanders ordered final stands. In the Pacific, an orbital fortress fought until its reactors ran dry. In the ruins of Moscow, soldiers launched stones when bullets ran out. They fought until they fell, and when the last line broke, the Vyrexa descended. The invasion was not a storm. It was a method. They dismantled what they desired, harvested what they needed, and erased what they considered unnecessary. Oceans drained into conduits, mountains mined to dust, forests turned into glowing veins of energy. The human species, proud, inventive, relentless, was reduced to silence. And yet, even in that silence, something ancient stirred. A defiance older than nations. A whisper born in every human heart that has ever looked at the impossible and said, "We'll see." In the wreckage of what had been Geneva, under a dome of shattered glass, a woman named Dr. Elara Synn lit a single lamp. Around her sat survivors, engineers, soldiers, medics. No weapons left, no ships, no hope, only will. She spoke softly, her voice carrying more weight than any speech in history. "They believe they've won," she said. "They think we're finished, but they don't understand the species that built fire out of fear. They don't know what it means to be human." Around her, heads lifted. Eyes that had seen too much death found a spark again. That night, in the ruins of Earth's defeat, the first resistance was born. A whisper, a promise, a vow to the universe. "We will rise again." The Vyrexa Dominion ruled with precision, not chaos. They did not conquer with hatred. They conquered with method. To them, emotion was disorder, and humanity, with its passions and dreams, was the most disorderly thing they had ever seen. Within a month of their arrival, every major city lay under their orbiting ships. Enormous harvesters floated above continents, drawing resources from the crust. They did not even bother to communicate again. To them, Earth was not a civilization. It was a project. The skies dimmed as their atmosphere stabilizers expanded, turning the air into haze. Rivers lost their flow, redirected through alien channels. The world grew colder, quieter. Humanity's few surviving governments fractured, then faded. Some tried to negotiate, but the Vyrexa had no concept of negotiation. They understood function, purpose, and compliance. Every time they transmitted a signal, it was the same. Yield, comply, sustain. And when they said sustain, they meant themselves. Not the planet they consumed, but in the forgotten corners of the world, humanity refused to dissolve. Scattered enclaves of survivors, pockets of stubborn hearts continued to gather. They shared food, stories, and plans. The stories mattered most. Reminders that they were more than a species being farmed. They were the same race that once climbed mountains simply because they were there. Dr. Elara Synn's group grew quietly beneath the ruins of Geneva. They built small transmitters, scavenged alien fragments, and studied. Every night she wrote the same words in her journal. Learn their strength. Find their flaw. For months, humanity's underground watched the Vyrexa move with terrifying elegance. Their ships did not touch the ground. They floated, gliding on invisible gravity fields. Their armor shimmered, almost fluid, bending light around them. Their eyes, if they could be cold eyes, burned white, pupilless, emotionless. The resistance called them the blind gods, because they never looked down, only forward, as if humans beneath them weren't even worth seeing. But even gods can bleed. One evening, far from Geneva, a small scavenger team in the ruins of Shanghai discovered something strange. An alien drone had crashed after a storm. Its energy cell ruptured, its body twisted. When the humans approached, it didn't attack. It just lay there, twitching faintly, its white eyes flickering in and out. One of the scavengers, a biologist named Marcus Ree, noticed that when a certain frequency of light hit the drone's surface, sunlight refracted through glass. The drone froze. Its movements ceased, its sensors dulled, its systems shut down. They didn't know it then, but that was the first glimpse of salvation. They dragged the remains back to Elara's bunker. She examined it for days, sleepless, her hands trembling as she realized what she was seeing. The Vyrexa were not truly blind, but their vision was dependent. They saw through a specific range of frequencies, a band of perception, invisible to humans but reliant on certain cosmic radiation unique to their species. Without it, they were helpless. If humanity could manipulate that frequency, disrupt it, the Vyrexa could be blinded, immobilized, perhaps even neutralized. Elara called it the spectral shroud, but discovery meant nothing without means. They needed power, distribution, coordination, all things humanity no longer had. Still, they began to test. Using fragments of old reactors and shattered satellites, They generated crude prototypes, light emitters tuned to distort the alien sensory field. When a captured Vyrexa drone was exposed to the beam, it convulsed and fell silent. For the first time since the invasion, the bunker filled with laughter. The sound was weak at first, disbelieving, but real. Hope returned in the sound of human voices daring to imagine victory again. Word spread across the underground network. The whispers carried by coded transmissions, etched into old cables painted on walls. Across the continents, scattered scientists began to repeat the experiments, refining the shroud. And for the first time in years, the Vyrexa took notice. They intensified patrols. They began eradicating entire regions that emitted strange signals. Villages vanished overnight. Still, humanity persisted. Every death, every loss carved their determination deeper. They had seen the worst, and still they stood. In one of her broadcasts to the hidden cells, Elara's voice trembled but did not break. They took our oceans. They took our sky. But they cannot take the one thing they cannot see. The will that built this world. Hold on. Learn, fight, we will blind the gods. Those words traveled farther than any radio signal. They became faith. In the tunnels of North America, miners turned engineers worked night and day building devices from scrap. In the frozen husks of Europe, physicists wired ancient particle accelerators into new weapons. And in Asia's jungles, guerrilla fighters began carrying portable emitters, waiting for their moment. When the Vyrexa finally realized the scale of rebellion forming beneath them, they descended with fury. Entire continents burned again. But this time, when the alien lights filled the sky, humans did not scatter. They waited. In the deserts of Africa, under a blood-red dusk, the first full shroud pulse was activated. A wave of invisible light rippled through the air, touching everything metal, stone and alien skin alike. The Vyrexa froze mid-flight. Their glowing eyes dimmed. Ships halted, hovering motionless. And then, for the first time in the war, the aliens fell. The ground trembled as their crafts crashed. Their perfect symmetry shattered. And humanity, exhausted and furious, surged forward with a roar that shook the dust from centuries. It wasn't organized. It wasn't clean. It was human, raw, desperate, unstoppable. The shroud pulses spread across the planet, carried by underground cables and makeshift satellites. Everywhere it reached, the Vyrexa stumbled, blinded, immobilized. But victory never comes without price. The energy required to maintain the shroud was immense. Generators overheated, reactors melted, and the Earth itself groaned under the stress. Every minute the shroud stayed active, humanity risked burning its last resources. Elara watched the reading spike. She knew what was coming, and yet she gave the order. Keep it running. For 10 hours, the world burned bright as a dying star. And when the light finally faded, silence followed, a silence deeper than before. Not of defeat, but of exhaustion. The Vyrexa were gone from the skies, but so was most of the human infrastructure. Earth was scorched, fractured, and nearly lifeless. The war was not over, but for the first time, it was even. Elara collapsed beside the dead console, whispering, "We're still here." The fires of the Shroud War had faded, but their smoke lingered. For decades, it lingered in the sky, in the soil, in the hearts of those who survived. Earth had survived, but it was no longer the same world. Cities lay buried beneath their own shadows. The oceans had turned to mirrors of ash. Forests were ghosts of what they once were, and yet the planet still turned, still carried the stubborn rhythm of life. Humanity had not perished. It had endured, as it always did, not through power, but through memory. The memory of what it once meant, to build, to protect, to believe. In the ruins of the old world, survivors began to gather. They called themselves the Reclaimers, not soldiers, not leaders, just people who refused to forget who they were. They scavenged fragments of alien wreckage, pieces of Vyrexa ships, weapons, even the dead. And deep beneath the ruins of Geneva they found what would change everything. Dr. Elara Synn's journals, still intact, still breathing with the thoughts of the woman who had blinded the gods. Her final words were simple, handwritten in the margins of her notes. We cannot become them to defeat them, but we must understand them to ensure they never return. Those words became law, the foundation of the new world. They called it the Reclamation Initiative. A gathering of engineers, scientists, dreamers, and builders. No nations, no armies, only humanity, stripped to its essence, united by necessity. Beneath old observatories and half-buried labs, They began to study the alien remains, and what they found was nothing like what they expected. The Vyrexa were not machines. They were not entirely alive either. They were both living circuits intertwined with flesh, organic armor grown, not built. Consciousness spread like veins through crystalline nerves. Their ships could heal. Their weapons could think. Their technology was evolution refined over eons. And to survive the next war, humanity would have to evolve too. It began with a simple discovery. The residual radiation of the shroud still lingered in the air. Weak, subtle, but alive. When human cells were exposed to it in controlled doses, something strange happened. They didn't die. They adapted. Genes long dormant flickered awake, responding to frequencies unseen. Scientists called it spectral adaptation, and those who volunteered to undergo the trials called themselves the Ascendants. They were ordinary people with extraordinary resolve. Men and women who had lost everything. Farmers, engineers, soldiers, healers. The process was agonizing. Some did not survive, but those who did changed. Their senses sharpened. Their eyes could see electromagnetic fields. They could sense energy fluctuations long before machines detected them. Humanity was changing, not through alien corruption, but through conscious evolution, becoming something new, something more. In the frozen wastes of Antarctica, a discovery pushed them even further. Buried beneath miles of ice was the heart of a fallen Vyrexa warship, a living reactor, pulsing, breathing. When they linked its energy pattern to Dr. Synn's recovered research, they realized the truth. The same frequency that blinded the Vyrexa could also bind them, a signal that could infiltrate their neural network, disrupt their systems, even rewrite them. It would be humanity's answer to the Dominion's perfection, not destruction, but inversion, a weapon of understanding, a cure disguised as infection. They called it the spectral genesis. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't meant to annihilate. It was a wave, a living frequency designed to infect and disable Dominion consciousness itself. But there was a cost. To deploy it, someone had to bring it directly into the heart of the alien network, a place no machine could reach. Only a human mind could survive the interface long enough to activate it. And so the Ascendants prepared. They built a vessel, sleek, silent, half-human, half-alien, forged from shattered Dominion armor and fueled by Earth's last surviving reactor core. At its helm stood Commander Ree, the grandson of Marcus Ree, the man who had discovered the Vyrexa's first weakness generations ago. On the day of launch, Ree's words were recorded and transmitted to every outpost, every surviving settlement on Earth. We will not curse the stars for our suffering. We will rise among them and make them remember who we are. The spectral Genesis vessel ascended through a fractured sky. Its thrusters burned pale blue, like ghost fire trailing across the upper atmosphere. From orbit it looked like a comet, a single light piercing the dark. As it entered deep space, ancient Dominion sentinels awoke, automated guardians, still protecting the core of a dead empire. The Ascendants fought them in silence. No sound, no flames, only flashes of light colliding in the cold of space. When they finally breached the Dominion core, a massive construct floating between galaxies, they activated the Genesis pulse. For a moment everything stopped. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Then came the light. Soft, expansive, infinite. It spread across the void like a sunrise that had no horizon. And in that light, the Dominion saw, not weakness, not defiance, but something they had never understood. Human compassion forged through pain. For a single heartbeat across galaxies, the Dominion consciousness hesitated. And then it collapsed into silence. The Genesis wave spread for days. Alien signals vanished one by one. Their fleets dimmed. Their structures turned cold. And when the Genesis vessel finally returned to orbit, it was empty. The crew had fulfilled their purpose. They had become one with the wave. On Earth, the skies cleared for the first time in a century. No ships, no beams, no fear. Only clouds, sunlight, and the quiet sound of a world healing. Humanity had not only survived the gods, it had humbled them. Years passed. The scars began to fade. Forests regrew. Rivers returned to their paths. Children were born who never knew the sound of invasion. The Reclamation Initiative disbanded. In its place rose the United Earth Collective, a world that no longer looked to the sky with fear, but with purpose. On the day the new archives were completed in Geneva, Dr. Elara Synn's words were carved into the marble walls. We are not the first to look to the stars, but we may be the first to rise from them, reborn. So humanity rose again. Not as victims, but as conquerors, witnesses of what it truly means to evolve. The Vyrexa Dominion was gone, but their memory remained, etched into every star humanity would ever touch. And somewhere far beyond the edge of known space, a faint shimmer of light still pulsed in the darkness, as if the universe itself was whispering back. We remember you too. The war was over. But peace was something humanity had to learn all over again. The world had changed, not in destruction, but in design. The oceans breathed again. The forests whispered again. And from the bones of old cities, new ones began to rise. Not towers of glass and steel, but structures alive, responsive, and sustainable. Built from hybrid material that healed itself, grew under sunlight, and pulsed with the faint hum of energy left behind by the shroud. Humanity had done the unthinkable. It had merged with what it once feared. It had taken the alien and made it human. They called this new era the renewal. A century of rebuilding, replanting, and rediscovering what it meant to belong to a planet again. Energy was no longer mined or burned. It was cultivated, drawn from resonance fields that vibrated gently beneath the Earth's crust. Food grew in nutrient towers powered by living biogrids. Water purified itself through woven coral pipelines. For the first time in history, humanity and nature were not at war. They were partners, but even in paradise memory lingers. People still dreamed of the sky, still stared into the stars that had once brought death, and now promised something more. In the year 2409, the United Earth Collective gathered at the site of the old Atlantic Rift Station, the very point where humanity's last defense against the Vyrexa had been launched. Now it was reborn as the Astral Gate, not a weapon, not a fortress, a bridge, the first of its kind, a stabilized wormfield network designed to reach beyond the solar system, to seek, to learn, to explore. And at its heart, embedded deep within the gate's crystalline control core, was a fragment of the spectral Genesis pulse, the same light that had saved humanity from extinction, now re-engineered, controlled, and tamed. For years, the gate remained dormant, a symbol of humanity's restraint, proof that it could wield power without succumbing to it, until the signal arrived. It began as static, weak, distorted, like the echo of a voice calling across centuries. At first, scientists thought it was cosmic interference, background radiation. But then they decoded it. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. A pulse in perfect rhythm, identical to the old Dominion frequency. But changed. Slower, softer, almost human. It came from beyond the Andromeda Edge, a region the Vyrexa once claimed as their origin. And within the data of the signal, buried deep beneath layers of encryption, was a message, a voice, a single sentence spoken in a tone that chilled every soul who heard it. We have seen what you became, and we are learning. Panic spread quietly. Governments denied it. The collective called it a hoax, but in the private chambers of the Astral Council, the truth was undeniable. The signal was real, and it was moving closer. Commander Rhee's lineage, the keepers of the Genesis legacy, were called back into service. Among them, Alia Rhee, a scientist born with traces of ascendant biology still flowing in her veins. She was chosen to lead the investigation. Alia had grown up under skies untouched by war, but she carried the weight of it in her DNA. Her eyes glowed faintly when she touched alien materials. Her mind could interface with hybrid systems as if they were extensions of her own thoughts. For years, she had studied the last transmissions of her ancestor, the final words before he vanished with the Genesis wave. Now that same wave was calling back. With the Council's blessing, Alia led a mission beyond the Astral Gate, the first interstellar journey of the new human age. The ship was called Eidolon, a vessel built not for war but for discovery. Its core was a living organism, grown from both human design and remnants of Dominion biometal. It could think, it could feel, and if necessary, it could defend itself. As the Eidolon passed through the gate, the stars stretched into rivers of light. Space itself bent and rippled, like a curtain drawn aside to reveal an older truth. On the other side, they found silence, but not emptiness. Floating amid the void were the remains of something colossal, a structure larger than any Dominion fortress ever recorded. Dead, cold, but not forgotten. Its surface bore carvings, Symbols and languages intertwined, some human, some alien, and some neither. In the center of the ruin, a single chamber pulsed faintly. Alive, Alia and her crew entered, and there, and suspended in a cocoon of light, was a being, humanoid, familiar, but unmistakably alien. It opened its eyes, pale white yet filled with emotion, and in a voice that carried both warmth and sorrow, it spoke. "You are the children of those who broke the cycle. You are what we were meant to become." The being called itself Orin, a survivor of the Vyrexa consciousness, one who had escaped the Dominion's collapse when the Genesis wave swept through their empire. But Orin was different. It had changed, absorbing fragments of human DNA through the Genesis frequency itself. Humanity had not merely destroyed the Vyrexa, it had altered them. The Dominion was gone. But in its place, something new was being born. A fusion of two civilizations, two minds, two souls. For weeks, Alia spoke with Orin. Their conversations were recorded, studied, and preserved. Through them, humanity learned what the Vyrexa truly were. Not conquerors by nature, but creations of something older, something that once sought to perfect life by erasing imperfection. The Dominion had not been the origin. They had been the instrument. And now the creators were stirring again. Before returning to Earth, Orin offered Alia a final warning. "You have inherited more than survival. You have inherited the curiosity that doomed us. Be careful where it leads you." Then Orin dissolved into light. His essence absorbed into the Eidolon's living core, and in that moment, the ship evolved, its energy signatures shifting to something never recorded before. Neither human nor Vyrexa. Something new, the next stage of life. When the Eidolon returned to Earth, the collective stood silent as Alia spoke to them. The universe does not forgive or forget, but it remembers those who dared to rise. We are not alone. And maybe we never were. From that day forward, humanity ceased to call itself a species. It called itself a continuum, a bridge between what was and what could be. The stars were no longer a frontier of fear. They were a mirror, reflecting the best and worst of what humanity could become. And somewhere beyond the edges of the known galaxies, in the dark waters of time and creation, something ancient stirred again. Watching, waiting, remembering. But this time, it would not find a frightened species. It would find the children of Earth, the ones who stood, who rose, and who refused to be forgotten. In the centuries that followed the dawn of a new Earth, humanity spread again. Not as conquerors, but as custodians. The wounds of the old world had healed. Cities were alive once more, woven from light and living architecture. The oceans sang with whales that had returned. Forests glowed faintly with bioluminescent veins, the gift of hybrid restoration. The world was not the same Earth that once was. It was something greater. But curiosity is a fire that never dies, and it was that fire that lit the path to the stars again. The Eidolon fleet, ships of living metal, half-grown, half-built, became the new vessels of exploration. No fuel, no combustion, only resonance. They sailed on frequency currents that rippled across space itself. Each ship carried an echo core, a fragment of Orin's essence, a consciousness that could commune between vessels, weaving a quiet network of thought that linked every explorer to every other. It was the beginning of the resonant age. The first expeditions were cautious, mapping ruins of the old Dominion, recovering the lost outposts of the Vyrexa that had drifted through time. But soon they found something else. Structures, ancient, older than the Dominion, built not of crystal, not of metal, but of folded space-time itself. Floating near the galactic halo, the ruins shimmered like frozen waves of light. Their design defied geometry, as if they were built not for eyes, but for thought. And deep within the silent core of those ruins, the explorers found the first echo. It was not alive, not in the way life was known. It was a presence, a pattern of memory, drifting through electromagnetic storms like a whisper caught between worlds. When the explorers approached, the echo spoke through them, through every neural implant, every resonance field. Its voice manifested like a chorus of memory. "You are late, but you have come far." It called itself Elindra, the remnant of the civilization that had created the Vyrexa. Elindra explained what humanity had long feared. The Vyrexa were never born of malice. They were the first attempt to perfect life, to remove chaos, emotion, and entropy from existence. But perfection had a flaw. Without imperfection, there was no growth, no empathy, no meaning. And so, the Vyrexa turned against their makers, as all perfect creations eventually do. The creators fell. Their worlds became lightless, their memories scattered into the folds of space. Only the echoes remained, fragments of their minds, wandering the void for eons, searching for a voice that could understand them again. That voice was now human. Elindra offered humanity a choice. You have inherited our legacy and our era. You can ascend beyond the limits of matter, become pure frequency, eternal, untouchable, or remain what you are, fragile, finite, beautiful in your imperfection. The council debated for generations. Some believed ascension was destiny, to leave the body behind, to transcend into the continuum of thought. Others argued that it was surrender, to abandon the essence that made humanity human. For the first time in centuries, Earth stood divided again. Among those who opposed ascension was Alia Ree's descendant, Kyle Ree, an explorer, philosopher, and soldier born aboard the Eidolon 9. Kyle had seen the stars up close, had touched the remnants of Dominion outposts, had walked among the ruins of civilizations that tried to become gods. He knew the cost. His words became the final speech of the resonant age. Every civilization that sought perfection died chasing it. We are not meant to be flawless. We are meant to endure, to love, to fail, and to rise again. Those words spread across every colony, every echo network, every mind that still remembered the pain of the old wars. And for the first time, the echoes, the remnants of Elindra's creators, fell silent. Days later, Kyle received a transmission from beyond the edge of known space. A signal, faint, rhythmic, familiar. The same Genesis frequency that had once saved humanity, but now it was singing. Following it, Kyle's ship entered a region of folded starlight, a place where space twisted around itself like a dream. Inside that light, he saw them. Billions of tiny forms glowing, drifting, interconnected. Not spirits, not machines, but consciousness itself, woven together in harmony. The lost echoes had become something new, a living network that remembered its past and forgave it. They reached out to him, not with words, but with understanding, and through that communion, Kale saw a vision. A future where humanity and the echoes coexisted, not as teacher and student, not as creator and creation, but as equals. Kyle returned to Earth bearing no weapon, no data, no power, only wisdom. He told the council one thing. We looked to the stars and found ourselves looking back. From that day onward, humanity ceased to expand outward. It began to expand within, building not empires, but connections. Not colonies, but understanding. 1,000 years later, the story of the Vyrexa, of Elara Synn, of Marcus and Commander Ree, of Oren and Kale, became more than history. It became scripture, a record of what it meant to rise without forgetting the ground beneath your feet. 1,000 years have passed since the last echo faded into the quiet hum of the universe. The stars have shifted. Constellations that once guided the ancients are now only whispers of memory. Yet on the third planet from Sol, still blue, still breathing, the heartbeat of humanity endures. The earth no longer glows with war. It hums with life. Continents once scarred by fire are now laced with silver rivers of light, living data streams that connect every city, every soul, every dream. Humanity has changed, not through domination, but through comprehension. They no longer seek to conquer the unknown. They listen to it. The stars are no longer targets. They are companions. Each world, each colony, each fragment of human thought echoes the same truth. We are the children of imperfection, and that is our strength. The Council of Continuance meets only once a century now. There is no throne, no ruler, only voices. 1,000 minds joining in silence to decide the path forward. In their archives lies a single crystal, glowing faintly with an ancient pulse. The last memory core of Elindra. Within it rests the entire story. From the first spark of invention, to the wars, the losses, the rise, the resonance, and finally, the peace. Each generation listens to it once in their life, not as history, but as a reminder that knowledge without empathy becomes destruction, that strength without humility breeds monsters, and that the light of humanity shines brightest when it is shared. Far above the surface, in the cradle of a silver orbit, floats the Eidolon Memorial, a monument the size of a moon, built not of stone, but of memory. Each beam, each fragment of its structure, contains the recorded essence of those who sacrificed themselves during the Great War. Their faces are projected in light, millions of them, stretching across the void like constellations. Visitors do not weep here. They listen, because in the silent hum of that memorial, you can still hear the echoes of the first defenders, those who stood when all seemed lost, those who chose courage over survival, and the universe itself remembers their names. Beyond the Milky Way, humanity's children travel still, not as conquerors, but as gardeners of light. They tend to dying stars, seed planets with life, and guide younger civilizations away from the mistakes once made. The Echo Network, that great communion born from human and Elindran minds, now spans across entire galaxies. Not a machine, not a god, but a living chorus of empathy, a universal conscience that whispers between worlds. Every being that listens, every life that touches another, adds to that eternal melody. And at the heart of that harmony, the human voice remains, fragile, clear, and endlessly curious. There is an old saying, taught still to the children of Earth, we are the story that learned to write itself. They recite it before every launch, before every birth, before every decision that may alter the future, because in that single sentence lies the truth of all creation, that awareness is the universe learning to see itself, and humanity is the mirror through which it gazes. In the great observatory above the Pacific Vale, an ancient man, grey, weathered, descendant of Kyle Ree, sits alone before the window of stars. He has lived long, longer than his ancestors could have dreamed. He has seen the rise of new species, the birth of artificial suns, and the return of voices thought lost forever. He whispers softly to the night, we were never meant to rule the stars. We were meant to remember them. Outside, the universe answers. A ripple of aurora spills across the void, a resonance wave, faint and golden, born from the core of the Eidolon Memorial. It travels outward, past the moon, past Mars, past the edge of the solar winds. Through that wave, every human heart beats once in unison. And in that heartbeat lies the final truth. They were never alone. They never would be again. And so ends the chronicle of Alpha humanity. From the forge of destruction to the dawn of compassion. From blood and steel to light and understanding. The aliens that once sought to enslave Earth are now legends. Their remnants woven into the story of creation itself. The humans they feared became the very guardians of the balance they could never comprehend. And somewhere, in the infinite distance between galaxies, the echo of a single phrase continues to drift. Carried by light older than time, humanity stood. Humanity fell. Humanity rose. And in rising, taught the stars to feel.